Welcome back, everybody. This is another episode of Conversations on Anarres. My name is Joseph Orozco. I'm the co-director of the Anarres project for Alternative Futures. And today we're going to be talking about the really free market in Corvallis, Oregon, where the Anarres project is home-based. During the COVID-19 pandemic, there were numerous mutual aid networks that arose throughout the country. Particularly here in Portland, Oregon, we saw lots of different networks that arose to help deliver food and medicine to vulnerable communities, neighbors picking up the opportunity to help and to provide transportation for people who needed to be able to get out and about during this crisis period. And in some cases, some of these mutual aid networks have continued on. We wanted to talk with some folks who had been part of this renaissance of mutual aid and mutual support in our communities. And one of the networks that has risen up here in Corvallis, Oregon, is the really free market. The really free market has a long history, actually. And from what I was able to find out, some of the first really free markets go back more than 20 years. And it's an international movement of people trying to provide spaces of non-commercialized exchange of goods, particularly for people who are vulnerable in our communities. The really free market has been operating here in Corvallis for a couple of years at least, and I wanted to take the opportunity to talk with some of the folks who have been behind it and to see exactly what motivates their involvement in this project. And so I'm joined today by Avery Jade, who is one of the organizers of the really free market, to help us understand a little bit about what this project of mutual aid is. So Avery, thanks very much for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, of course.
Um, so I'm really interested in the really free market. I followed you for a while now on social media and seen some of the different kinds of projects that you've been involved in, but I really wanted to find out how this works. So for folks who don't know what the really free market is, could you explain what it is and how it works?
Yeah, so the free market, we run on donations and community support. Um, when we started, it was like pretty small. I wasn't there right when we started. I've been here for about like a year and some change. But yeah, we run on community donations. Um, and we just set up every week and like provide needs. It's pretty simple. It's a pretty simple idea, just providing everything for free.
So when you say you set up, where do you usually set up?
So usually we set up every week on Friday, 12 to 4 in Central Park, which is on like Monroe Street in Corvallis.
What's the decision to choose public spaces like that to set up?
I feel like the decision mainly lies in exposure. There are a lot of houseless folks around and in Central Park, as well as just like it's a busy spot. Like Monroe Street is a busy spot. Like people will come walking um, around downtown for whatever they need a lot, all of the time. And Fridays in the afternoons are like the best time usually, especially as we got more established. People have planned to like, let's go to the market. It's happening.
So help me sort of see the picture here. You all sort of take up a bit of space in the park and you set up donations of
Yeah,
different kinds of items.
yep. Yeah, we usually pick up from one or two people's houses. We bring tables, we bring chairs, we bring humongous boxes of like anything you can imagine. Um, and then people, we set up, and then sometimes people will bring their donations. And a lot of people usually just take stuff.
What are some of the items that are donated and what seem to be the items that are most sought after by folks who come to the market?
Um, the most items that are donated are like clothes, clothes and shoes mainly. We get a lot of hygiene products also. We've gotten stuff like chairs, fans, air purifiers, which I have one in my house. I got it from the free market. Lamps, just like food sometimes. We get a lot, and then things that people really need. I guess during the summer specifically, stuff like I would say like fans, sunscreen, good walking shoes, towels and stuff, just to keep everything not wet. Uh, yeah, as well as just like thermal water bottles to keep stuff cold.
So, I wonder, do you ever have people sort of walk up and want to pay for things? Because it's a non-commercial space, right? It's really
Yeah.
free. Everything is there just for the taking. Do people often get confused about what you're doing in the park?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the people who are our quote unquote regulars are like houseless folks, which is, normal. We would expect that. But a lot of people who come down are often like, all of this for free?
Hmm.
And they'll offer to pay. And we're like, no, we don't accept payment unless, we have donation jars, which usually we use those donations if we need to like reimburse people or, you know, pay for tents and things if someone asks. But we're like, yeah, everything's free. And usually it's like, what?
Yeah.
Everything's free? Like, it should be normal, but
Yeah. Can you say a little bit about like the history behind the really free market here in Corvallis? Like, what inspired you all to get this started?
yeah, so basically, what kind of inspired us mostly was just like seeing a need for stuff. One of the primary organizers, they were involved with a free market in California, um, from San Jose, and they wanted to start one here when they moved. And so, yeah, it basically just stemmed from seeing a need.
You mentioned that this was based on an example from San Jose. I know there are other different really free markets all around the country. Were there other examples that you all looked to try to figure out how to do what you wanted to do?
Yeah, like there, as you said, there have been like historical examples of free markets since like the 2000s. People have been doing it for decades. Um, yeah, the main thing is just like we look to places around the US that were already doing it. But I feel like specifically it was mainly just like the idea of our organizer to like take stuff from like San Jose's free market that they helped start. And that was pretty much like our basis. And now we see people taking ideas from us and following us on social media and be like, hey, like, love what you do. Could you give us any like advice?
I know that nearby there's also a really free market in the city that's nearby to us, Albany, Oregon. Are you all connected together, or were they inspired by what you were doing here in Corvallis?
So I actually started the one in Albany. Me and I kind of got like two or three other organizers involved who live in Albany. Um, and the main reason I thought that Albany could use one was A, because there wasn't one, B, because I'd been doing Corvallis's for like a while. I think at that point when I started Albany's, it had been like 7 or 8 months since I'd been in Corvallis's. And I also saw a need because we started at the community college. And a lot of college students were like, hey, I can't afford food. And they did not allow the college to restart a food pantry. So we were like, hey, that's not that's not cool. And so we kind of started that, and it's growing. It's still gaining traction, but yeah.
That's spreading. Wow, very cool, very cool. Well, let me ask you this. I've noticed in some of the social media presence that you all have that you also, in addition to donated items, you have political literature, zines, and so forth. I see that a lot of it, it does have a kind of political message to it, but particularly one of anarchism.
Mhm.
I was wondering if there's a political foundation to what you do with a really free market. Is anarchism an explicit part of the project or informing how you all do your work together?
I wouldn't say it's I would say it's explicit. All of our signs on them have the fist of power, like the black fist of power. All of them have, the A for anarchism. Um, and a lot of our members also participate directly in like more direct opposition in terms of anarchism. But I would say that compared to a lot of stuff, it's not like a requirement. Like we don't require anyone who comes by to be like you have to be a hardcore, you have to agree with every single thing we say about politics, which a lot of people come by and they don't care about what we have to say and they just come by for what they need, which is fine. um, we always just ask like, hey, let's perpetrate a good amount of respect to each other, and everyone usually just goes about their day. um, I would say also that, yeah, like having a free market is like inherently uh political. I've tried to like explain this in my brain, but honestly, anything that makes a capitalist mad is like inherently political. Like our entire existence is making certain people mad, and that's like I think has to do a lot with politics right now.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that, the obstacles that you all have faced. But I wanted to ask too, I mean, amongst you internally, in terms of your organizing together, do you all talk politics with one another, or is this mostly focused on just providing mutual aid to the community?
I would say it kind of depends. There are a lot of us who are mainly there to learn about providing needs, and are mainly there for community. And there are also I would say the same amount of people there to like learn more about anarchism and leftism and whatever else. We have quite a few members who are like very politically involved, who know like a lot, who are basically like walking, talking anarchist libraries. Um, and it's not an expectation that we talk about politics, but there are a lot of conversations that happen about politics. um, and they're not like confrontational or like anything like that. They're mainly just like, hey, like, what does this term mean, or like, what does this symbol mean, is it really anti-fascist? And then we'll usually just like talk about it. We've like recommended each other books, stuff like that. But yeah, there's I would say there's a good mix of people who are like more into just talking about helping folks, and also an equal amount who are into just talking about politics.
Right. Well, so let's talk a little bit about what you said, this being a space that creates controversy because it is against the kind of economic norms in mainstream society, right? Because a lot of mainstream society expects market exchange, capitalist exchange, and you all are out there trying to move things counter to that kind of way of exchanging goods and services. For a while, you all had a storefront in a building in downtown Corvallis, and then that got shut down. Um, could you tell us a little bit about how the storefront came about and how it worked and what happened eventually that made you have to close it down?
Yeah, so the store, so I think I joined maybe like a month after the store was started, which was very exciting. I actually got involved because of like a thing I saw, like there's a free store. What is that? But we was started in April last year. And yeah, it was basically just started because we decided that we had gotten enough in donations to afford like this tiny room. It was so cool. It was very cool. And we just set it up literally like a store. Come in, browse, take what you need, leave. Like that's it. Um, and throughout the course of the almost year that we had it, there were obviously like a lot of houseless folks who were coming in, and just checking it out because they saw flyers. And everyone at the markets, on Friday markets, would talk about the store. Um, and there were a lot of people who uh, would come in and then leave our store, and then like either they would just loiter around the building, or someone used the bathroom, or whatever, like whatever people do in an unlocked building during business hours. And the person who managed it, who lives in Portland, he would hear about certain instances through the security person who worked there. Um, and basically would email us and be like, "Hey, you can't let these houseless people do this questionable stuff. Like this is your guys' fault." Which obviously, like just like any other store, like if they leave our store, we're not really responsible for what they're doing. And so it came to a point where they decided to send us an eviction notice. After I guess it was like too many instances. Their thing was, oh, we're endangering the because it's a house like a com accessibility housing for like older folks. And so their thing was, oh, you're endangering the older folks who live there. Even though a lot of the older folks who lived in the building, like almost all of them would come down and visit us pretty often. Like I still see some of them down the street, and they're like, "Oh, hey." Um, so yeah, basically they decided to evict us in October, because of the like houseless altercations that they'd been reported to. Um, yeah, just real awful stuff.
So they used security as an excuse to evict you out of the space.
Yeah, basically. But I mean, we all know it's not just because of security, it's because they don't want houseless people to be in nice buildings getting stuff that they need.
Um, Thinking about those obstacles, I mean, it's been reported that all along the West Coast, right, houselessness is in a kind of a crisis stage. There's thousands of people all up and down the West Coast, and that population has only been growing, particularly here in Oregon. Um, and its solutions to it seem to be escaping, um, leaders, political leaders, economic leaders for solutions. Um, do you all feel that um, there are obstacles in the way of your work of serving this population with the work that you do with the free market? You talked a little bit about how business people don't want to see the presence of houseless people out and about. Are there other obstacles that you all have encountered?
Um, I would say one of the big obstacles is relying on money, which is really hard to not do. Um, when we have benefit shows, we put a price tag that's like suggested, like, hey, we could really use this donation. Um, and we all feel really weird about doing that, obviously, because our like inherent work is to provide things for free, which it's not like it's an obstacle to other people, but it's an obstacle to us. I guess you could say in the eyes of other people, it might be an obstacle for us. I think another really big obstacle is mainly just dealing with the way that society works, which is pretty broad, but it's like also pretty specific. There are a lot of people who will come and just kind of berate us about either our space that we're using or the stuff that we're doing, whether it's enough or not enough. Um, and we're always concerned about like our personal safety, especially hearing about stuff that happens in other cities where they're doing similar stuff. Um, like we've had a few instances where like Parks and Rec people or like a cop or something will come up and be like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" um, yeah, and I mean aside from that, like also space and like numbers of people. Um, Specifically now for like, I know this is for Albany Market, but our numbers are pretty small, which means that we can't provide as often, which really sucks. And I really hope that with the way that Corvallis has been growing, like our free market has been growing, that never happens. But there are some days where we're like struggling to find folks to run markets. There are just a bunch of little things that make some of the work that we do really um, big, kind of daunting.
I was going to ask you, I don't know if you ever checked in on this. Do you know how many people you might connect with at any particular market? Like how many folks come to get stuff at any particular day?
Uh, so when we had the store, we would keep track, mainly for like, because we started with 2 days a week, and then we went to 5 days a week,
Mm.
and then I think we went to like every other day or something, and that we were like keeping tally marks. It was very interesting because I think at the store we serviced like almost 2,000 people in like the few months that we were there. It's an insane number. Um, at the markets, I'm not sure. I Some days are way better than others. Like some days we only get like 3 or 4 people, and then other days we get probably like 30 to 50 people. Like some days are really like just a lot. But yeah, I maybe we should start keeping track again. I think that would be interesting.
You mentioned a question about your own safety and being, kind of attacked and braided. Um, do you get a lot of um, attack on social media for what you're doing, for helping vulnerable people in the community, for this kind of anti-capitalist messaging that you have?
Um, sometimes. A lot of the times I would say it's just like weird messages. There was a point in time where, an organizer's like car got stolen or something, and someone would message us like someone else needed it more. Like you guys shouldn't rely on like whatever, which was strange. Um, we've gotten like comments underneath like show posters specifically saying like it's weird that you put a price tag even though you're supposed to be anti-capitalist. Isn't that against the point? But in reality, like at this moment, we can't really escape that. Um, I would say social media is kind of a lot less berating, more just, sometimes someone feels odd about a poster that we put on and decides to comment, and that's pretty much like all of the weirdness we get on social media.
Well, that's good. That's good. I mean,
Yeah.
this opens up a one question that I wanted to ask you about is that I have noticed that you all just don't put on the free market, but you're involved in organizing a lot of different other community events, and so it seems as though, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you all are connected with a lot of different sort of independent musical groups in town and art collectives, and you put on, as you said, benefit shows. Could you talk a little bit about that work that you all do to create art and music and community as well?
Yeah, it's very fun. Yeah, like benefit shows, they're mainly used for us to build community and like get people involved with the market, but also for us to gain donations, which is sort of a double-edged sword, but it is what it is. Um, and we also, yeah, as you said, we do help out with a lot of other orgs. We usually table. People will ask us to table at events. We're doing a few events throughout like July and August with experiments in sound. We've done like an event or two with like Trash Church, I believe. Um, and yeah, we're just connected with so many people. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
How did all these connections come about? Are these people that are part of the really free market, or did you all actively seek out other groups to work with?
I would say, as far as I know, the majority of the people that we kind of partner with aren't fully involved with the market. We know them, a few of our more involved organizers. By more involved, I mean like they've been involved since like the beginning. They've been actively seeking out partnerships with certain people, and just learning how to do stuff like, book shows and stuff. And then I think it also is that those orgs will reach out to us and be like, hey, like I think it'd be really cool if like we had a little market at this show, like just so that people can grab stuff. Um, yeah, like it kind of goes both ways with that.
Cool. Um, do you have any partnerships at all with either like city or with Oregon State University at all? Do you work with them in any kind of way?
No, we
Uh-huh.
don't. People think we do, but we don't.
I noticed that there have been markets at Oregon State University. Is that because you have organizers that are connected somehow with OSU, or you decided that OSU was a place that you needed to be at?
Yeah, so one of our organizers worked for a while with OSU, and there are a few of our organizers who are students. I'm a student, but not at OSU. I'm at LBCC. So there's a good mixture of students and non-students. And the other thing is like SEC is really busy during the year. And so sometimes we would see, hey, the weather's really bad at Central Park right now. Let's go to SEC where it's, covered. There's a little bit more wind protection and there's a lot more people coming through.
So that's the Student Engagement Center on campus, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of vibrant kind of like uh, organizing going on, communication. You're developing other networks in place. Um, what's the future for the really free market? Where are you hoping that this can go? And do you have any plans for what the market's going to look like in the future?
Um, that's a really good question. I am one of those people who like sometimes thinks about the future and then gets like way too like anxious about thinking about, super big things. I think so far with the market, we're just kind of keeping on.
Hmm.
We're really hoping that more people will get involved, and also that like we maybe get. I mean, because we've made connections with a really cool group called Roadside Moon in town, who are kind of doing a similar thing but out of their house, and making connections for with people who can store all of our stuff, which means we hopefully get more donations in the future. And a lot of us have been kind of fantasizing about getting another storefront. And I would be really excited to get another storefront. I think we would have to keep in mind that sometimes it's really hard to find people to like staff the storefront. But it's like a cool way to like help people. But yeah, like so far, I think we're just focusing on like building membership and connections and like, yeah, I mean, I would say we're pretty fairly well known right now in the town. Yeah, just building up.
So you're mostly sort of building up capacity to be able to keep the market running.
Hmm.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned Roadside Moon. I know that they've had some difficulty too in doing this kind of work. Roadside Moon is uh, uh, a project that got started, I think, during COVID, where there's a person who has had their garage. They turned it into a sort of a large pantry, food pantry, clothes pantry, and the city is forcing them to scale it down or even shut it down. And so there's controversy about whether or not people recognize, that is, elected leaders recognize the need for these kinds of free exchange spaces, given the houses crisis and economic recession. There's a lot of need out there, and the city seems to be trying to crack down and shutting these things down. So let me ask you just as a personal question. You mentioned that you've been involved in this for about a year or so, and you helped the market expand into Albany. What inspired you to get involved with all of this, and what do you hope to be able to get out of doing all of this work?
Um, well, for me, I kind of saw it on like Instagram, I think, and I was like, oh, like maybe it'd be a job opportunity. Um, and I remember like commenting something like, "It's paid," not really knowing. They were like, "No, it's like volunteer," and I was like, "Hmm. I mean, I'll still look into it." And so I remember going and like immediately, um, like I just like environment is welcoming, and I've made a lot of friends there. And so I would say what like originally inspired me was like, finding more community. There's a lot more people who are like me, who think like me, who, whatever. Um, and like as I learned more about it, I think what really like inspired me to like keep going for this long is like seeing the need. Um, and also just like caring about people. Like that's like the basis of everything. It's like I just want to show that like I care about people. I think this is like one of the best ways to do it. And I think for as far as like my goals, um, going forward, I really want to be part of helping newer members feel as welcomed as I did, as well as just like, as I said, helping with like building up the project because it's really important. Um, and just sort of like maybe, when I move eventually, like helping start it again in wherever I move next, just like I did in Albany and stuff.
Great. How can people get involved with the Really Really Free Market if they are interested?
Yeah, so the easiest way to get involved is to come to a free market. Yeah, 12 to 4 on Central Park. We're just sort of, we're pretty obvious. Sometimes there's music playing. It's kind of like towards the front, right on the street. You'll notice us. And like another easy way is to just like DM our Instagram, which is RRFM underscore Corvallis, and just say like, hey, I want to get involved. And even if you cannot drive anything, like that doesn't really matter for us. We have thankfully a lot of drivers now. Yeah, just like, bring your best attitude and like help us set up, help us tear down, just definitely making friends. And it's pretty easy. It's not like creepy initiation process.
Great. Well, Avery, thanks very much for helping me to understand a little bit more about the Really Really Free Market. And we'll try to put some links to your social media so that folks can get a hold of you if they're interested. But thanks very much for your time and your insight, and thanks for your work in the community.
Yeah, thank you for like wanting to educate people about this. It's very important.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining in on us with another episode of Conversations on Anarres. You can find the Anarres Project on our website, anarresproject.org, and we're all over social media. You can find us at Anarres Project on Facebook, on Instagram. We're also on Twitter, though we're starting to leave that platform as it starts to die out. You can find us also on Mastodon, and newly we are on Thread. So you can find us on a variety of different social media, but you can also listen and join in to us on Spotify, and of course here in our video channel on YouTube. So if you have any questions for us, please go ahead and get a hold of us. Thank you once again, and I hope to see you very soon on another episode. Thanks, Avery.